Hello, everyone. We are back talking about Scott Peterson, and I kind of wanted to lay out where I eventually see this going, since I know that I've had a couple comments like, "Oh, he's innocent," and all of that, and I am trying to keep an open mind. So, because this is an appellate issue, I did want to start with the state's information first. I understand that this is a giant thing of um, you know, information that we're taking in. We are on page 103 of 337. So I understand that I am giving the state the first bite at the apple, and changing my mind or at least giving me more information. That is actually done on purpose because during an appellate case, the state is given more deference. During a regular case, the defendant, if something leans between it going in the defendant's favor or not, the standard operating procedure is to, favor the defendant. But at the appellate stage, it is to favor the state, to see things in a light most favorable to the state. So I did want the state to get their sort of information out. Y'all, I'm having a hard time being not biased on this one. I will throw that right out there. I don't like cheaters and disgusting cheaters who cheat on their pregnant wives. Look, it may hit a little too close to home for me, but I am definitely trying to keep at least information beyond him being a dumpster fire human, that the state is thus far kind of given us the pre sort of things that lead us to believe that Scott would be the one with the most likely means and, you know, ability and the opportunity to do this crime. Thank you, Wolfram, for doing all of the mod stuff. Christine, I hope you are doing well. Cynthia, welcome. Observation Station, a Spirit Fleck. All of you guys just watching, hanging out, lurking, and staying away from the humid outside. Welcome. Now we are going to get into probably one of the things that the Innocence Project is going to be heavily focused on. We are getting into, the Medinas, the people across the street from them, getting robbed, or possibly they think they're getting robbed. Good afternoon, or well, now it's evening for you, so good evening in the UK from Melanie. Good afternoon, BL Blazy. So we are on sent articles and search warrants. Uh, yeah, observation station. I know there are some people that really feel like there is evidence out there, and I'm trying like Hades to not let my personal bias about the fact that he is a dumpster fire, husband, not get in the way. But thus far, what the state has given us is that there doesn't seem to be anyone else who has links to all the different things that were found. Lacey and Connor were found in the bay. He has a boat now that he doesn't tell anyone. And the fact that I am not, or nor have I ever been a Fed, but I have watched Silence of the Lambs enough to know. I'm just kidding. I've watched all of the, forensic behaviorologist shows on repeat. Abducting a pregnant woman in the middle of daytime, it seems to be a very high risk crime for people that are essentially burglars looking for people that were out of state, but I'm willing to give it a chance. So the subsection is street barricaded and the Medina's handcart is on their front lawn. Susan and Rodolfo returned from their trips to Los Angeles on December 26, 2002. As they drove past the police department located downtown, they noticed a large amount of media trucks around the police station. Susan called her son at 4:12 p.m. and asked why Modesto was on the news. As they drove to their house, the police said the street was barricaded and Rodolfo had to show his ID to confirm that he lived in the neighborhood before they would let him in. Welcome, Nanny Goat. I am having a great weekend. I hope you are afternoon. I hope you're having one too. You know those days where you have everything planned to go one way and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, mom, I need a ride here," and, "Oh, I need to get this," and then everything, works out okay. You are able to get some stuff you needed done, but you're like, "I had something completely different, uh, to do." I am not sure, but that would probably be something to look at. They approached their home and saw a lot of people standing on their lawn, and there were many police and police cars, including sheriff's deputies from Contra Costa. Suzanne Susan also noticed that their dolly or handcart was standing on their front lawn, which was quite unusual. Rodolfo stopped in the driveway and parked. They glanced at their front door and saw it was shut. When they checked the mailbox, they found their outgoing mail was gone and they had two or three small letters in the mailbox. The Medinas walked to the south gate, which was still padlocked. After they unlocked it, they immediately noticed their leaf blower, which had been previously locked in the shed, was now on the cement pad where their car had been parked the morning of December 24th, 2002. The Medinas also noticed that the lock to their French doors leading to their dining room had been damaged and someone had burglarized their home. Many, but not all rooms had been ransacked. The safe, which required 2 to 3 people to lift, was missing. Suzanne walked across the street and told police officers that they had been quote unquote robbed. Susan observed one of the leather gloves that she used in the yard had been taken from the shed and a hammer had been placed inside. It was now sitting on their bed. As discussed in further detail below, the police began an investigation into the burglary. B. Receipt for sent articles. On December 26, 2002, three members from the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department responded to Modesto's Police Department's mutual aid request for a trailing dog. Captain Christopher Boyer and California dog search and rescue dog handlers Eloise Anderson and Cindy Valentine met with members of the Modesto Police Department. Together, they went with the Modesto Police Detective Grogan to Scott's house to meet with the defendant. When they arrived at the house, the defendant was there with his parents and a corporate attorney. Good. Thank you for joining. Let's see. Captain Boyer introduced himself and explained to the defendant that he wanted to conduct a quick missing persons interview to get some information that would help them try to find his missing wife. The defendant agreed. As they sat around Peterson's dining room table, Captain Boyer pulled out his notebook and began asking questions and started to write notes in his notepads. Concerned about his table depicted below in trial exhibit number 70 or 37Q, the defendant interrupted him and asked that Captain Boyer not write on the kitchen table because the defendant did not want it damaged. Seriously, dude, your wife and unborn child are missing, but you're like, not the dining room table. That's some fancy formica. I understand that's wood, but just I can't. Do you know what would be lowest on my scales of things to give 2 Fs about if my husband was missing? My table. Not to mention I have a bunch of wild children, so I don't have anything as nice and pristine as that table, so I guess it's somewhat of a moot point. Captain Boyer complied at the defendant's request and took his notepad off the table before he continued the interview. The defendant indicated he last saw Lacey on Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. Lacey was wearing a long uh, white top and black pants and was barefoot. Captain Boyer said or asked the defendant what type of footwear Lacey generally wore when she walked the dog, and the defendant replied, white tennis shoes. Captain Boyer asked if those shoes were in the house. The defendant did not know. The defendant told Captain Boyer that Lacey had a sunflower tattoo on her left ankle. The defendant told Captain Boyer that Lacey had just inherited some jewelry that she was wearing, which included a diamond solitaire necklace, a bracelet with blue stones and diamonds, diamond earrings, and a diamond watch. The defendant clarified that Lacey earrings were screw posts and that her ears were triple pierced, but she had no other body piercings. Since it was cold outside, Captain Boyer inquired about the type of jacket Lacey would be wearing. The defendant indicated that she typically wore one of his jackets. However, the defendant did not know if he were missing any of his jackets. Well, I mean, she didn't run anyone over. We have learned that from Canton PD and, Lolly that, oh my goodness, if someone takes off their shoes, there are definitely, been some unaliving somewhere. The defendant indicated that Lacey was not wearing any barrettes or clips in her hair. He told Captain Boyer that prior to Tuesday, Lacey had last walked on Sunday around the neighborhood, and that last Friday, Lacey walked in the park. The defendant described Lacey's normal walking route as to the main park entrance around the children's play area, the barbecue, and then to the path on Covina. The defendant told Captain Boyer that Lacey had planned to clean the house for guests, walk the dog, then meet at the house with him at 4 p.m. Now, this is a side note or a footnote about that 4 p.m. As a side note, this is the first time the defendant told any law enforcement officer that Lacey had planned to meet with him at 4 p.m. when they asked her what her plans were for that day. So this is the first time that he is bringing up 4 p.m. as a noticeable time. And if you're someone that is this used to lying, I'm sure he has thought up that 4 p.m. Time period for a reason. Captain Boyer asked the defendant if Lacey's wallet was at the house. He also said he did not know. This was again a lie. The defendant had observed the contents of Lacey's purse with Officer Spurlock later that night with Detective Brockini on December 24th, 2002. So he is not a good sort of storyteller, narrative maker, that he cannot remember what it is that he's done with separate people. So the night when he called in her disappearance, you had a lead detective that I believe was taken over. I don't think Brocchini was actually the lead detective, but it's been a little bit. But you had at least one officer and one detective that know they were with Scott when they went through Lacey's purse. Her wallet was still there. So, he is not, he just doesn't seem to know things. I mean, I'm pretty sure Mr. Mo, even when he's, maybe not the most observant of what I wear, if I stole one of his jackets, which I frequently do, because why buy a jacket when he has like 84,000 of them? I don't get it. But he could pretty much tell which one I would have stolen from him and or appropriated. He would, if I were missing, he would know if I had my purse or my wallet. I mean, these are not things that he would have sat all day at home not doing. Now, the defendant stated that Lacey did not take anything with her when she went on walks, including her keys. And people, for the love of Cheetos, at least take your ID with you when you go walking. I mean, just in case anything happens, they know who you are. They might know if you have any medical issues. The defendant or Captain Boyer asked if Lacey didn't have her keys, then how was she going to get back into the house? And the defendant replied that she usually left the back door unlocked. Now, I will say that this would give me, if I'm trying to be open-minded, this does give me pause. I mean, we have people from across the street or on the same street that just got robbed with the, point of entry being the back, French doors. So this could be some reasonable doubt. If it weren't coupled with everything else that seems to only link with Scott Peterson, this is reasonable doubt. I mean, it seems that this could be linked. He asked the defendant for the whereabouts of Lacey's keys, and the defendant said that he had taken Lacey's keys out of her purse to look in her car. The defendant also told Captain Boyer that he reported Lacey missing at 6 p.m. after he called her parents. Now, there is a footnote to this. Shockingly, this was a lie. The defendant never called 911 to report Lacey missing. It was instead her stepfather. Thank you so much, White Rabbit. So Scott never called the police. It was the stepfather that did call. The defendant was present and showed Captain Boyer which hairbrushes belonged to Lacey. Eloise Anderson and Cindy Valentine, dog handlers, wore gloves and collected the hairbrush, a pink slipper from Lacey's closet, and a sunglass case containing a pair of sunglasses from Lacey's purse and a brown and green man's slipper. These items were each placed individually in a separate Ziploc bag, then each were placed into a separate Ziploc bag, so they double Ziplocked them. Okay. Prior to leaving with the items and beginning their search for Lacey using dog tracking, and that has footnote number 60. Beginning on December 26, 2002 through December 28, 2002, dog handlers Cindy Valentine and Eloise Anderson utilized their tracking dogs, Merlin and Trimble, respectively, at the address where Lacey was last seen, the defendant's warehouse, and road leading out of town towards San Francisco Bay. Defendants' moving papers only articulate a limited portion of this evidence in their statements of facts and argument, stating starting February 24th, 2004, the court conducted a 4-day long evidentiary hearing regarding the admissibility of all the dog tracking evidence at trial. Ultimately, the court determined that only dog tracking evidence would be admissible in trial from December 28th, 2002, from Eloise Anderson and her dog Trimble and Ron Seats and his dog TJ. The trial court's ruling was reviewed by the Supreme Court in an opinion at People versus Peterson 2020 and the rest of those case numbers. In the event that the court was going to consider the selected inadmissible evidence in that the defense has proffered, the people request an opportunity to make an addendum which includes the full and complete statement of facts, which includes where the dogs alerted or show signs of interest. So basically, this is boiling down that the defense did not want them to use the dogs or be able to use the dogs in all of the searches they went on. So it was negotiated either in motions in limine or an evidentiary hearing that there were only certain days and only certain testimony that they could put in. Now, if the state is alleging here that the Innocence Project and Scott Peterson are using other inadmissible facts in their request to get DNA. So they would like to put in all of the reports and not just the limited reports if the Innocent Project does get a chance to put all this other information in. The defendant asked for a property receipt from Captain Boyer. This was the first time that a family member of a missing person had ever requested a receipt for sent articles, so Captain Boyer had to create a receipt for the defendant. The sent articles were later booked into the Modesto Police Department. And welcome, blue-haired Bible lady. I I know it doesn't feel like this has been 20 years because it means that I'm getting to that seriously sad 40 number, but, I still have a month to go, and Imma live like YOLO. Uh, so I do like to say that I am liking that it looks like there is I don't know what it's called, maybe a chain of evidence in this case. I know it's crazy, we haven't gotten used to that with Massachusetts, but other places do have chain of custody. Search warrant at the defendant's house. Less than 48 hours after Lacey was reported missing, the Modesto Police Department executed a search warrant for the Peterson residence beginning the morning of December the 26th. Before the police started searching inside the house, they checked again for signs of forced entry, but found none. Now, this I think could be possible if she left the door open. I think a burglar's not going to break down a window if they can tell the door is unlocked. So the fact that they haven't, found forced entry if she is typically known for leaving the back door unlocked is not shocking to me. They also checked outside the house for footprints in the soil or broken tree limbs, anything that may indicate an intruder. The primary purpose of the search on December 26 was to look for forensic evidence, including blood and hair fibers, FBI personnel assisted in the forensic search. As mentioned above, police found two very small spots, later confirmed to be the defendant's blood, on a white duvet cover on the bed in the bedroom. Police also collected two hairbrushes from the drawer of a vanity in the bathroom of the bedroom, and that day they also collected hair samples from the defendant. One chicken wire, hammer, and concrete debris. Police did a cursory search of the defendant's truck and Lacey's Land Rover. The patio umbrellas, blue tarp, and balled up tan canvas tarp were no longer in the back of the defendant's pickup truck. People's Trial Exhibit number 116A shows a roll of cut chicken wire. 61. During a subsequent interview, the defendant told Detective Grogan that the roll of chicken wire was new. However, it did not match the evidence as it appeared that the roll had been released and cut. Small chunks of cement and a claw hammer with dried concrete powder residue were found in the bed of the defendant's truck on December 26, 2002. Well, yeah, almost White Claw, but not quite. The vehicles were impounded and towed to a secure location for further processing. So we see the claw hammer, although that looks more like a gardening tool to me. And then the chicken wire that had been opened, and it looks like there'd been some concrete work in his car or his truck. Patio umbrellas and the blue tarp. 3 patio umbrellas had been moved to the backyard under the covered patio and were found leaning against the fence. The blue tarp was found in a utility shed where the lawnmower was stowed. Next to the covered patio, a backpack style sprayer, commonly used for fertilizing or spraying weed killer, had a liquid substance in it that was found on top of the blue tarp. In People's Trial Exhibit 69H, depicted below, the patio umbrellas are visible under the covered patio propped against the fence, separating the backyard from the driveway. Additionally, the storage shed containing the blue tarp and yard and weed sprayer are visible through the open shed door. So, all of these things are starting to add up that Scott emptied out his, truck and put things away. Now, I'm sure these are just small puzzle pieces, but they had to figure out where those things went. 3, boat cover soaked in gas and chunks of concrete. Well, sir, what are you doing here? If you're going to have evidence, you might want to get rid of it. Don't leave it half done. The bunched up tan tarp that Detective Brocchini saw scrunched up in a ball in the back of the pickup bed on Christmas Eve was the cover to the defendant's aluminum boat. When the defendant purchased the boat on December 9th, the boat cover was in good condition, according to Bruce Peterson, no relation to Scott, but he did sell him a boat. The previous owner. Although the defendant had made an earlier trip to his warehouse on the morning of December 25th and dropped off other items he had in his truck, as discussed further below, the defendant did not store the tan canvas boat cover with the boat. Interesting. On December 26, 2002, this boat cover was found, still bunched up, in a separate standalone plastic tool shed located on the back or south side of the house. A gasoline leaf blower had been placed on top of it and leaked gas all over it. Okay, well, maybe Scott wasn't trying to be smart. He was just trying to hide it. He was not trying to, put things, you know, barbecue style. He just was going to hide them. At trial, Captain Christopher Boyer explained that any volatile or organic chemicals such as gasoline, kerosene, oleum, bleach, ammonia, fertilizer impedes and makes it difficult for tracking dogs or cadaver dogs to detect human scent. People's Exhibit number 69J shows the plastic backside of the house where the boat cover was found on December 26th through 2002, and trial number 69K shows the gasoline leaf blower that had been sitting on top of the boat cover. The gasoline smell was so intense that day that searchers had to hang the boat cover over the fence before placing it into an evidence bag and load it inside their vehicle. People's Trial Exhibit number 69L is a photograph of the gasoline-soaked boat cover as it hung out to air dry on December 26, 2002. Not that I'm aware of. And I know not another leaf blower. We're all still traumatized. The boat cover was sent to Department of Justice for forensic examination. Pin Kayo, a criminalist, examined the boat cover and found pieces of concrete which she found were visually similar to the defendant's homemade concrete anchor. The fishing license. Before leaving the residence for officers to serve the search warrant, the defendant gave the officer his 2-day fishing license. In red pen, someone had written 12/23/02 on the date issued, line number 2 in the name line, and numbers 23 and 24 on the dates valid line. The exhibit shows the defendant's 2003 2-day sports fishing license on the front and the 2022 Ocean Enhancement sport fishing stamp on the back. So I think they mean 2002 because I doubt that they were going to put 2022, but that's just me. At trial, the manager for Modesto Big Five sporting goods store testified and confirmed that on December 20th, 2002, the defendant came into the store and selected 2 fishing lures and a fishing combo that consisted of a disassembled saltwater fishing pole and reel. He purchased a 2-day license with Ocean Enhancement stamp. The receipt indicates that the defendant made the purchase around 3:49 p.m. The manager explained that it is generally standard procedure for the cashier to fill out the details on the license, which includes writing the date issued, which would have been 12/20/2002 in this case, and then it's best practice for the cashier to fill the 2 consecutive dates that the customer was going to go fishing at the time of the purchase. However, the former Christmas Help employee who completed the transaction failed to properly fill out the license, whereby someone else wrote the numbers with a red pen. A red ballpoint pen was documented as one of the items seen in the bottom of the defendant's boat on December 24th, 2002. Number 5, Lacey's jewelry. During the Christmas Day interview with Detective Grogan, the defendant theorized that Lacey might have been kidnapped by a transient or someone for her jewelry. On December 27th, the police continued their search of the Peterson residence. This time, they searched for specific items. In particular, police were looking to see if jewelry that the defendant said Lacey had been wearing on Christmas Eve morning was missing from the home. Depending on which officer the defendant spoke to and on which date, he indicated Lacey was wearing a variety of jewelry as she mopped the floor barefoot that morning on December 24th, 2002 at 18:04 hours. So that would be 6:04. The defendant told Officer Evers that Lacey was wearing her, quote, diamond ring, diamond earrings, and a diamond necklace. On December 25th, 2002, the defendant told Detective Grogan and Investigator Mansfield that Lacey was wearing diamond earrings, a necklace with a diamond solitaire, and a wristwatch that had diamonds around the face. Hello, Dolly Talk and Wolfram and Bobby Baloney. On December 26, 2002, the defendant told Contra Costa Police Deputy Sheriff's Deputy Chris Boyer that Lacey was wearing a diamond solitaire necklace, a bracelet with blue stones and diamonds, diamond earrings, and a diamond watch. On December 26, 2002, the defendant told Detective Grogan that Lacey was wearing diamond earrings with screw-on clasps, a diamond solitaire on a gold chain, a watch with diamonds around the face. On December 30th, 2002, it would be 2002, the defendant told Detective Grogan that Lacey was wearing earrings and she was wearing one of her 2 diamond-encrusted gold wristwatches. Since the defendant's account of what jewelry that Lacey was wearing had changed, Detective Grogan inventoried and accounted for each piece of Lacey's jewelry, including all the different items that the defendant claimed she had been wearing, with the exception of two items. The diamond screw on earrings and the Crowton watch were the only two pieces of jewelry unaccounted for. Uh, People's Exhibit number 8, pictured below, shows Lacey's jewelry found during the execution of the search warrants on December 26th and 27th, which is included but not limited to Lacey's diamond watch, diamond solitaire necklace, and sapphire ring. So, yeah, he has no idea. And I mean, Nanny Go, you know me. Me and June Cleaver wear like this, so I was always wearing my best jewelry. Yeah, that would not be the first thing on my mind when I'm, a million years pregnant, but who knows? The investigation indicated that Lacey was most likely still wearing her diamond screwback earrings when she disappeared, not the Croydon watch. The jewelry Lacey inherited from her grandmother included a Croydon gold-style ladies' dress watch with a small face and a circle of diamonds. Amy Rocha said that she and Lacey went through all the jewelry and neither of them were interested in keeping that particular watch. The defendant was very familiar with Lacey's Croton diamond bezels ladies' watch, as the defendant put it up for auction uh, for $100 on his eBay account twice. On December 1st, 2002, the defendant listed her watch for $100 on eBay. The auction expired on December 8th. The defendant relisted the same watch for auction on December the 8th, and that expired on December 15th, 2002. Records did not indicate if the item was sold. The payment was sent to Scott Peterson at the Covina address. However, not once in the defendant's varying descriptions to the officers of Lacey's jewelry did he claim that Lacey was wearing her grandmother's Croydon watch. Furthermore, it had a dead battery. During the investigation, Detective Grogan reviewed several segments of the videotape that lasted for several minutes, where Lacey's and the defendant's voices are heard as they're recording and rearranging four different watches, including the Croydon watch with diamonds around its face. The three video segments were taken at different times, which lasted several minutes, and the time never changed on the Croydon watch, suggesting that the battery was dead. The Croton watch seen in these video clips matched the photos that were submitted and posted on eBay. Furthermore, detectives followed up with Lacey's jeweler. Lacey had brought several pieces of jewelry that she had inherited to her jewelry store in McHenry Village, including a Genevieve watch to be repaired. Lacey never brought in the Croydon watch to be fixed or have the battery replaced. Detective Grogan queried whether any Croton watches had been pawned in pawn shop, and they found one pawn receipt relating to a Croton watch pawned on December 28th, 2002. And this is footnote 63. Investigators searched pawn records for Croton watch and found one result which indicated a Croton watch had been pawned on December 30th, 2002 for $20. However, the description indicated the watch was scratched and there was no mention of diamonds. Modesto police followed up regarding the Croton watch after the defense admitted a pawn shop sale ticket made out to Deanna Renfro, defense trial exhibit N, during the trial. Modesto Police Lieutenant Smith interviewed the pawn shop owner and indicated that Lacey's watch was not the watch that was pawned. Authorities also tracked Deanna Renfro down in Oklahoma, and she was shown photos of Lacey's Croton watch from the eBay site. Renfro denied that her watch was the same watch as Lacey's watch. She described the differences between her watch and Lacey's watch. So that kind of got scuppered. We have no idea where that watch went. Home and work computers. Authorities seized 5 computers during the execution of search warrants at the defendant's home and business in late December 2002 and into February 2003. From the Covina residence, Police took one compact laptop computer, one Dell laptop, and one Sotec notebook computer. An IBM laptop computer and a Dell desktop computer were seized from the warehouse. Retired Modesto Police Department computer forensic technician Kirk Stockham examined the hard drives of the various computers. Detective Lydell Wall of the San Elias County Sheriff's Office testified as an expert in computer forensics. Wall examined the computer's hard drives with respect to internet usage. Email exchanges between the defendant and Sibley from November to December 2002 were located in the couple's home laptop, and the defendant's worktop computer had been deleted but still resided on the hard drive. There were also emails sent to SLPET or ETEL at MSN.com confirming a delivery to of a package to Amber Fry. The email had been deleted, but was still otherwise accessible on the hard drive. The defendant also deleted Eric Olson's resignation email, which had been sent on December 26, 2002. As mentioned above, the forensic examination of Peterson's computers uncovered numerous email exchanges involving the defendant's email address and the sale of jewelry on eBay in December 2002. The search also revealed an email exchange involving the private sale of a high-capacity Glock pistol magazine that the defendant initially tried to sell on eBay, but the site would not authorize such a sale. Forensic examination further showed that on December 24, 2002, at 8:45 a.m., the home laptop computer showed activity from 8:40 to 8:45. The defendant sent an email response to the Dell laptop home computer from his email account to an address of J.S.C. Shockley regarding a golf bag the defendant sold on eBay. This contradicted what the defendant told Detective Grogan during the Christmas Day interview, indicating that the golf bag email was sent from his workshop. The forensic search also indicated that on December 24, 2002, from 10:30 a.m. until 10:56 a.m., there was activity on the defendant's Dell Work PC4 located in his warehouse. This is now D search warrant for the defendant's warehouse. As mentioned above, on December 25th, 2002, at the direction of Detective Grogan, officers secured the defendant's warehouse to ensure that no one entered until a search warrant was executed on December 26th or 27th. After his Christmas Day interview with Detective Grogan and Investigator Mansfield, the defendant returned to his warehouse to learn that an officer was stationed outside and would not allow him to enter. On the afternoon of December 27th, after searching the defendant's residence, the officers executed a search warrant at the defendant's warehouse. The warehouse remained secured until the officers arrived. Prior to conducting the search, the police memorialized the condition and contents of the warehouse with a video recording, which was played for the jury. And there is a footnote 64, and it said the jury was able to see the fluorescent overhead lights on the warehouse ceiling, which had been turned on and illuminated the warehouse. So they were not out of electricity. Scott Peterson, got the bill paid, but that night that they went to search for Lazy the first night, he was like, "Look, I don't have any power in this warehouse." The warehouse was about 70 feet by 30 feet, most of it packed with pallets of fertilizing product. There was a flatbed trailer that was 16 feet long by 7 feet wide. Next to the trailer was the defendant's 14-foot game fisher, 15 horsepower motor, aluminum boat, and boat trailer. People's Trial Exhibit number 69G, shown below, was taken at the time of the search warrant on December 27, 2002, and shows the defendant's boat next to the flatbed trailer. So, yeah, doesn't look like he was doing too good at selling all those products. I mean, I know it's an interesting concept. I didn't know if I'd ever seen it before. Oh my gosh, this guy is such a dingus. Camouflage jacket, fishing poles, and lures. The camouflage jacket that Detective Brocchini had seen in the back of the defendant's pickup truck on Christmas Eve was lying on top of a vinyl green bag in the boat. The Big Five bag and the receipt were located on the shelf in the warehouse. The two unopened packages of fishing lures from Big Five had been moved from the defendant's truck and were found in the green vinyl bag in the front portion of the boat. Officers found two fishing poles in the rear of the boat. Lacey's hair mashed in the jaws of pliers found on the boat. Now, I think we're getting to real physical evidence that I think is going to be hard to explain away. On December 27th, 2002, a pair of needle-nose pliers was found in the same location captured in David Burkini's December 24th photo, still in the boat under the middle seat. Pictured below, trial exhibit number 121A is a photo of items located inside the defendant's boat on December 27th, 2002, during the execution of the search warrant at his warehouse. On December 27th, 2002, Hendy retrieved the needle-nose pliers from the boat and noticed what appeared to be human hair intertwined or wrapped around the teeth of the pliers. Grogan later viewed the photographs that were taken during the execution of the search warrant and also saw what appeared to be hairs in the pliers. Grogan spoke to Detective Dodge Hendy and asked Hendy to retrieve the pliers from the police department's evidence room and determine if there was hair attached, and if so, determined whether it was suitable for DNA testing. Uh, so what they're doing, they were supposed to close the door. I'll be right back. But Mr. Moe is rebuilding a hallway from scratch, taking off the paneling and making a whole new laundry room. So we have full on demolition going on in my house because we always do. Hendy retrieved the pliers and noticed what he thought was a single hair, about 5 to 6 inches in length, looped around the pliers and fixed in the clamped position. Or in the clamp portion, there was some sort of vegetation material stuck to the hair. 65. An expert later identified the vegetation material consistent with annual bluegrass found in Central Valley, which grows during November through April. Hendy inserted the pliers into an evidence envelope, pulled the handles apart, removed the pliers from the envelope, and looked inside the envelope to ensure that the hair was inside. It did appear that the single hair was deposited in the envelope. Detective Hendy and Brocchini retrieved evidence envelope on February 12, 2003, for the purpose of determining whether the hair had a root. They inspected the contents of the envelope and found that there were two hairs inside. Hendy confirmed that the evidence envelope was sealed and not tampered with. He explained that he initially perceived it to be one hair in the pliers, but might have actually been two that were held together by the clamped portion of the pliers. Alternatively, if it had been a single hair, Hendy suggested that the hair might have somehow broken inside the envelope. In looking at a close up photo of the hair when it was in the pliers, Hendy pointed out that the entire hair was not visible. He took extra precaution in repackaging the hairs. Oh, I'm sure Mr. Moe would love it. I am of no assistance to him, usually. Don't do that, Griffin. Rod Oswald, a Department of Justice forensic criminalist who specializes in hair evidence, later determined that the evidence had two separate hair fragments. Number 66, Oswald explained that if the root were present, it was referred to as hair. If there were no roots present, it was considered a hair fragment. Now, Oswald concluded that the hair fragments were microscopically consistent with the samples of Lacey's hair. Microscopic analysis also revealed that the fragments were not consistent with samples of the defendant's hair. Oswald noted that there was splaying or flattening out of the hair fragments that could have been caused by the pliers. The fragments could have initially have been stuck together due to the clamping action of the pliers or as a result of hairspray or hair oils. The fragments were sent to the FBI's lab for mitochondrial DNA testing. Noted FBI forensic examiner Dr. Constance Fisher concluded or conducted mitochondrial DNA testing. Dr. Fisher explained, okay, we have already sat through the Karen Reed trial, so obviously we understand what mitochondrial DNA is, but just for a short little recap, I'm not reading a whole paragraph footnote. Mitochondrial DNA is found in the mitochondria. You're welcome. The more you know. No, I'm just kidding. Mitochondrial DNA will only come from the matrilineal line of the family. So if you have the same mom as the rest of your siblings, you are all going to have the same mitochondrial DNA. That's just how it works. So it will not narrow it down to the specificity of nuclear DNA, but it will kind of show your family ancestry. And welcome, Fraudit Wrangler. Dr. Fisher determined that the mitochondrial DNA sequence in the fabric or fragments from the pliers was the same as the reference sample received from Sharon Rocha. That's Lacey's mom. Meanwhile, while mitochondrial DNA analysis did not permit the conclusion that the hair fragments were Lacey's, the mitochondrial DNA in the hair fragment was of the same sequence that was found in Sharon's mitochondrial DNA. In other words, the fragment and reference sample share the same maternal linkage. For Fisher's further analysis found that the sequence was relatively rare. Fisher also compared the hair fragment to a sample of the defendant's hair, but the sequences did not match. So, well, Mr. Moe is out doing some demolition, so we're doing all the things today. As for the pliers, Sarah Yoshida, the state lab's senior criminalist who examined the tool, explained that they were extremely rusted and hard to open at the same time she completed her examination. She opined that salt water could increase the corrosiveness of the pliers over time, including during the intervening time since she first examined them on February 2003. Yoshida concluded that the pliers had not been used recently, meaning since the rust formed. She didn't observe any blood or tissue on the tool. We also find these homemade anchors. So, a homemade anchor without a rope, a distinct circular shaped void left in spilled concrete powder on the flatbed trailer. A small homemade 8.6 pound concrete anchor was discovered inside the boat. It was circular in shape and had a piece of bent rebar coming out of the top of it. Even though there was no rope attached to this object, it is commonly referred to as a boat anchor throughout the trial. Oh, thank you, Paula Carpenter, for catching me live. People's Trial Exhibit number 72, seen below, is a photo which shows the size of the defendant's homemade concrete anchor that was recovered without any rope attached from inside his boat on December 27, 2002. Now, call me crazy, and I'm not a marine biologist by any stretch, but I think your anchor needs to be attached to a rope in order to stop the boat, but I could be wrong. Inside the warehouse next to the defendant's boat was a flatbed trailer with significant amount of concrete debris on it. In the middle of the trailer was a dustpan and a gallon-sized Rubbermaid pitcher. The pitcher was about 1/3 full of grayish-colored water and cement residue. There was Also, what appeared to be spilled concrete powder on the trailer, visible in the concrete powder, were distinct circular voided areas which appeared to be consistent in size. Detective Grogan noted that it seemed like a tremendous mess for making one 8-pound anchor. Now, look, y'all, I'm not gonna lie to you. I make a mess with my hair dye. So, you know, I could see, making concrete being a giant mess, but he's kind of without, a bunch of other anchors that he done made. On the trailer next to the concrete debris was an unopened package containing 200 feet of galvanized wire. We are talking about the Scott Peterson case. So, Scott Peterson um, is convicted and currently is appealing to the state of California to retest DNA evidence in the Scott Peterson case. This is the state's response. The state's response is 337 pages, basically going over the entire trial, saying, "We did a good job. Everything was included in the trial. We have already retested these DNA samples several times, and there is nothing going on. We have this case, the jury, adjudicated you guilty. Stop asking us about this." And Wolfram, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. And those went to TJ, Mimi, Rebecca R, Donna Shepherd, and Wheezy Bob. So congratulations to all of you guys. Give Wolfram a thanks, and thanks for supporting the channel. So I am doing this review because I didn't really get into the Scott Peterson case. I was currently at the year of our Lord 2002. Well, that December, I was still a senior in high school. And then that summer and all through 2003, I was failing out of basic training, okay? Because some people we are not runners, and I am not. So I wanted to look at this case with new, fresh eyes since I really didn't pay attention to it when it was new, but also wanted to see how my opinions would be formed based on the information we were given. And the reason I started with the state first is because during an appellate process, basically everything is seen in the light most favorable to the state. During your original trial, everything is supposed to be seen in a light most favorable to the defense. So if there's even a little bit where a defense would get a bump from this, you're supposed to do this. But with an appeal, the state is given deference. So I definitely want to look at what the state had first, again, since I wasn't very into this trial, and I've now been watching trials for about 2 years. So I am in no way a lawyer, but I can kind of see how things are shaded a little bit, you know, either by words or by careful presentation. So I definitely want to see if maybe I have been thinking this wrong. I will say that trying to remain not biased because this man cheated on his pregnant wife, and the state is going further and further to convincing me that he is probably the only person with means and opportunity. Uh, one sec. My youngest, most feral, likes to keep coming in and out of my room as I am trying valiantly to keep the door closed. And yeah, I think some of it is questionable. I am trying to keep an open mind, but he is definitely guilty of being a trash bag husband and future father. But I didn't pay attention to it, so I do wanna kind of see where are places that the Innocence Project could, uh, convince me and see where we go from that, but I going to be 337 pages long, so this will be definitely a multi-part series. Let's see. We got to the wiring. Pictured above are the three photos taken during the search warrant at the defendant's warehouse on December 27th, 2002. People's Trial Exhibit number 122D shows the flatbed trailer with concrete powder debris and distinct circular void patterns. I mean, I guess I'm sort of seeing the circular void patterns, but People's Trial Exhibit number 122C illustrates the picture with grayish colored water, the dustpan, and concrete debris on the flatbed trailer. People's Trial Exhibit number 122A shows several items on the trailer, including an unopened yellow and blue package containing 200 feet of galvanized wire, a hose, a pump with some straps, and a PVC pipe apparatus that attached to the pump. 26. The defendant's former employee, Eric Olson, indicated that TradeCorp did not need a lot of machinery and didn't use any farming equipment to sell fertilizer. The only equipment they had was only piece of equipment they had was a 10 horsepower engine with a transfer pump and hose to transfer the liquid fertilizer from one tank to another. Uh, the defendant had previously purchased, he found the defendant's homemade anchor fit perfectly inside. O'Neill's further examined the debris inside the plastic picture located on the defendant's flatbed trailer on the warehouse. This debris was similar to the debris that was then vacuumed from the defendant's boat. O'Neill determined that the concrete debris collected from the defendant's warehouse floor, trailer, boat, and bed of the defendant's pickup, boat cover, and dining room floor. 69. Let's see. During subsequent search warrant conducted on February 18th, 2003, Detective David Hahn retrieved what appeared to be a very small piece of concrete on the dining room floor. So a lot of things are coming together. I'm guessing powder concrete chunks, if you're working on things, would be easy to carry around. So this just means that, yes, he was working on anchors for the time being, at least to me. And they were all consistent in their composition: Portland cement, fly ash, and aggregate. A bag of cement and a receipt for the cement from Home Depot were also collected. O'Neill testified that the anchor was consistent with the Home Depot cement, but a sample taken from next to the defendant's driveway, where he told Brent he had dumped the leftover cement, as discussed further below, was excluded as a source of the anchor material. Well, yeah. For examination of the defendant's boat: A, saltwater and concrete debris in the boat. Police searched Department of Motor Vehicles recordings relating to the boat and discovered that the defendant never registered his boat. The defendant's boat was seized and placed in a secure storage facility operated by the Modesto Police Department. There, the boat was vacuumed and debris from the boat was collected. They located water in the bottom of the boat, which they later had tested and confirmed was salt water. There was also evidence of cement remains inside the boat. Bruce Peterson, the original owner of the boat, testified he and his wife would often be in the boat together and they could both move freely about the boat without any issues. Bruce further indicated that there were many times both he and his wife would be on one side of the boat together. One would be sitting using the net, the other would reel in a fish. This never created a problem with the boat. During the trial, the people produced photos for the jury to show that Lacey's body could have been placed, or how it could have been placed in the boat, concealed under a boat cover and transported to, the bay. Kim Fulbright, an employee for the San Elias County District Attorney's Office, testified at the time the photos were taken in January 2004. She was 38 weeks pregnant and a similar height and weight to Lacey. 5 foot 2 inches tall and 157 pounds. People's trial exhibit numbers 106F, 106H, and 106J, pictured below, show how Fulbright could fit in any section of the defendant's boat. So it is quite good that they had someone, of similar size, pregnancy stage, and things like that that could do a demonstrative. I love I love having demonstratives because I am not really good with spatial reckoning and making things up in my head unless they're shenanigans filled. And good afternoon, Tim Swope. Defendant's lies continue. A. Defendant last saw Lacey styling her hair. On December 28th, 2002, Sharon Rocha wanted to know what happened to her daughter. She approached the defendant at the Red Lion Hotel Volunteer Center and grabbed his arm, pulling him into a separate room where she shut the door. Sharon asked the defendant what Lacey was doing on Christmas Eve morning, and the defendant said when he had left the house that morning, Lacey looked so cute because she was sitting on her bench in front of the mirror styling her hair the way Amy showed her. The defendant is in New York and flying to Paris. On December 28th, 2002, at 4:46 p.m., Amber called the defendant's cell phone and he answered. She said hello and he responded hello, hello, and then there was a hang up. Amber called again and he answered. She was surprised he answered because the defendant was supposed to be leaving for this big trip. So Scott had told Amber, I know, I feel like that boat shouldn't be allowed in the bay, but okay. That looks more like a lake boat to me, and like I said, I am not a marine any sort of ologist, but that does not seem like a boat you take onto the ocean, if you ask me. But, Scott had told his girlfriend that he was leaving to go to New York and to Paris and all these places over the holiday season, so she wouldn't be able to reach him, but he got a satellite phone. Basically, he just went to Verizon and got a separate one, like a little burner, but she is all confused because she's like, what are you doing?" The defendant was supposed to be leaving from New York at the time she called. He was supposed to be on an airplane on his way to Paris. Amber thought she would just be leaving him a message on the phone and that his cell phone would not be working in the air. He said that he was in Boston and taking a flight from Boston to Paris. He indicated that his flight had been delayed and he spent the day in New York, but he didn't call Amber in the morning to tell her this. The defendant claimed that the airport had comped him with a gift certificate or $100 to get a massage and a meal, and he was just getting ready to go to the massage when she called. The defendant said he would call her in 2 hours. On December 28th, 2002, Amber was upset that the defendant had not bothered to call her that morning if he had spent the day in New York. She became more suspicious regarding the defendant's whereabouts and confronted him. Amber brought up the fact that he went to the trouble of telling her that he was monogamous and there was no one else and that they were going to have a future together, but she was having trust issues. Amber felt bad that she was having trust issues with him. Sweetie, don't apologize. For the love of all that is holy, don't apologize. The defendant apologized and reassured her. He told Amber that he should have been more sensitive to her feelings and more considerate and should have called her. After 2 hours, the defendant called Amber back at 6:28 p.m. and they had a short conversation. He said he was at the airport in New York and just getting ready for his flight to Paris to leave. I thought, okay, there you go. Sure. C. One homemade anchor and the leftover concrete. During a subsequent interview on December 30th, 2002, the defendant told Detective Grogan that he had purchased the cement to make an anchor. The defendant indicated that he made the anchor at the warehouse. He claimed he made the anchor in a plastic bucket. Searchers did not locate any plastic buckets or molds at the warehouse. The defendant said he bought a bag of cement and gestured the size to Grogan. The detective interpreted his gesture as meaning a 60-pound bag, not either an 80 or 90-pound bag. The defendant told the detective that he threw the leftover bag of cement away at his home. However, the defendant contradicted himself in a recorded conversation when he spoke to Brent Rocha, Lacey's brother, on January 16th, 2003. Brent confronted the defendant about a news article which mentioned that only one homemade anchor was found. The defendant told Brent that he made a boat anchor with a cement, then put some in his driveway. Bay searches begin when Lacey's scent is detected at Berkeley Marina. A defendant accurately described Brooks Island in detail. During the Christmas Eve interview the defendant had with Detective Brocchini, and subsequent interviews that he had with Detective Grogan, the detective spoke about the place he went fishing. The defendant explained that he put his boat into the water at Berkeley Marina, and from there he went north for 2 miles and found a little island. The defendant described the island in detail. Specifically, the island has a bunch of trash on it and a big sign that says no landing. He also described broken piers that he saw further down. The defendant said he chose that spot because he assumed it would be a decent shallow area. So this is where he said that he was. The defendant told Detective Grogan that he went trolling for fish as he made his way to Brooks Island and back. Authorities traveled to the backside of Brooks Island, which is located less than 2 miles from Berkeley Marina, and found the defendant's description of the island was accurate. People's Exhibit number 69F, depicted above, shows where the no landing sign and pile of debris and broken piers were located on Brooks Island. Furthermore, People's Exhibit number 69C, depicted below, shows the no landing sign posted on the island next to a large amount of debris on the shoreline, and 69D shows the broken piers the defendant described around Brooks Island. So, I mean, he had to come up with the truth. I mean, somewhere. Lacey's scent is detected at Berkeley Marina. On December 28, 2002, Captain Boyer and dog handler Eloise Anderson, along with her trailing dog Trimble, responded to Berkeley Marina. And 70, the footnote says, on December 28th, 2002, Alameda County Sheriff's Department volunteer and dog handler Ronald Seitz was also using his trail dog TJ and attempted to locate Lacey's trail using Lacey's pink slipper. However, TJ did not alert. Trimble is a Labrador who has undergone extensive training beginning when she was a puppy and is certified by the California Rescue Dog Association in trailing human scent. Captain Boyer retrieved the scent articles from the Modesto police detectives, gave the sunglasses case containing glasses to Anderson. Anderson presented the glasses to Trimble to see if Trimble could detect Lacey's scent. 71, at trial, the jury heard evidence regarding how tracking dogs detect scent when Captain Boyer explained that humans leave a scent behind in the form of their sweat and skin rafts as their skin sheds, and the raft comes into contact with the environment or passes by an area. A trailing dog has the ability to detect this human scent. A trailing dog may also detect live scent after a person has died. A person can smell both alive and dead near the period just post-mortem, right after they die. It is referred to necrobiosis, which is the planned or pre-programmed death of certain cells as the cells continue to shed. A trailing dog could still smell the residual live cells. Yeah. So is trolling where you're just pulling it along? I always thought trolling was when you had those big clampy things and you okay, or Forrest Gump when you just had the big nets. Like I said, that's about as much as I know about boats, Titanic and Forrest Gump. So really, I'm not a genius. They started at the first checkpoint entrance, and Trimble smelled the scent article, searched, and indicated that there was no trail. Anderson then went to the second choke point and again presented Lacey's glasses to Trimble. This time, Trimble detected Lacey's scent and stretched down the ramp to the pylon, stopping at the edge of the water. And Trimble indicated that's where Lacey's trail ended as the dog looked out onto the water. Bay searches and dive teams begin. Beginning on December 28th, 2002, professional dive teams from various law enforcement agencies used side scan sonar equipment, and that is our 72nd footnote. The sonar can profile the bottom of a body of water and search for missing objects. A computer reconstructs images taken by small torpedo-shaped devices towed by the boat, known as fish. The fish sends out a sound beam, and reflections are reconstructed on the computer screen. The sonar provides a 95-degree view of the body of water and 100 feet on either side of the fish, or a 95-degree view, sorry. There is a narrow blind spot because the sound beam is in the shape of a V. Okie dokie. Now, where was I? To search the San Francisco Bay from the Berkeley Marina north to Point Richmond and the Richmond Marina. This included the areas between Berkeley Marina and Brooks Island where the defendant said he'd been fishing. Through the investigation, detectives reevaluated all the information and evidence and identified 41 reasons they believed that Lacey Peterson would be found in the San Francisco Bay. Thus, they continued to focus search efforts there. The Bay search operation was conducted over 15 days or so, beginning in December 28th, 2002 until May 2023 or 2002 or 2002 and then 2003. Divers battling zero visibility wind and currents. The search conditions on the bay were consistently difficult for dive teams. First, the wind and wave action on the bay made it nearly impossible for the search boat captain to maintain a straight track on the water in carrying out the planned search pattern. Second, due to extreme currents and tides at times, divers could not see more than a foot in front of them. The current and tides also made it difficult for divers to dive down directly on a target. Divers had to be dropped a certain distance away from the target, then float with the current until they reached the target. When the side scan sonar registered an object the team wanted to investigate further, they fixed locations to aid the dive team in locating the object. However, when the boat made a second pass over the area immediately after, the object could not be located at the fixed coordinates. Dive teams from the FBI assisted in the bay search. These teams employed magnometers and conducted a very methodical hand search on the floor of the bay. Additionally, the East Bay Regional Park District and the California Highway Patrol participated in a helicopter search on the shoreline area along San Francisco Bay. Oh, well, thank you for the information. I had no idea, but that works. See, stay humble, admit you don't know everything, and the chat will help out all the time. Yeah, despite the extensive and exhaustive search efforts, search efforts, nothing of evidentiary value was found. That is not surprising to Jeffrey Bayer, the head diver for the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office Marine Dive Cliff Rescue Unit, who participated in the search. He explained that conditions in the bay made looking for a body or a small weight difficult using side scan sonar, especially if either had become buried or covered in mud. Uh, Amber discovers the defendant's pregnant wife is missing. This'll be good because I'm sure she didn't know that, oh, he had a wife. On December 29th, 2002, Amber was attending a party with Sean Shipley. At about 1 a.m. on December 30th, 2002, she received a phone call from her friend who told Amber there was a Scott Peterson from Modesto who was the husband of a missing pregnant woman. Amber immediately called the Modesto Police Department and spoke to a dispatcher in an attempt to determine if it was the same Scott Peterson. Once the dispatcher confirmed that the defendant was indeed the husband of a missing pregnant woman, Amber provided information that she had been dating the defendant for over a month. After a few hours, when no one had contacted her, Amber called the Modesto Police Department and this time spoke to Detective Al Brocchini. After the phone call, Detective Brocchini and Detective John Bueller drove approximately 100 miles from Modesto to Amber's house in Madeira and interviewed Sean Shipley and Amber Fry. Prior to this discovery, Amber had been unaware that the defendant was married to a woman named Lacey and that she was now missing. Amber explained the relationship and showed the detective photos and gifts. She later turned over these personal items from their relationship. Amber agreed to work with the police and tape record her phone conversations with the defendant. Police provided Amber with a recording device and showed her how to use it. Amber would carry the recorder with her and begin recording as many calls as was feasible. On December 30th, 2002, and guys, this is why you never have a side chick, because we are vindictive. Women are vindictive. This is why you don't have a side fella, a side chick, or anyone you've generally screwed over in your life, because they are just waiting to take a shot at you. So, generally try not to do criminal things, and then don't try to be a jerk face. Life lessons. On December 30th, 2002, the defendant called Amber from the defendant's second phone 3 times. The defendant told Amber that he was traveling to Europe for business, so he made changes in his travels to be able to travel less and spend more time with her. A candlelight vigil and a New Year's celebration in Paris. On December 31st, 2002, 1 week after Lacey disappeared, the family held a candlelight vigil at Isla Loma Park beginning at 4:30 p.m. The defendant called Amber from his second phone 4 times. They spoke at 4:20, which was 10 minutes before the vigil was supposed to begin for Lacey. Amber recorded the phone call. The defendant told her he was calling from Paris. Okie dokie. A and described what New Year's Eve atmosphere was like in Paris. Now, this Amber, you have such better resting, I mean, because I would have just started going off. So, he's feeding me all these lies about it's awesome, there's fireworks at the Eiffel Tower. I mean, it's a good thing we didn't have, FaceTime then, because if I were Amber, the amount of just deuces erected in the, general direction of the cell phone and eye rolling, I would not be able to control. And oh my gosh, mom of 10, so would I, except that okay, what would have stopped me from being full petty mode and going to the vigil would be that I would not wanna take, you know, all of this attention off of Lacey, a woman who's really missing and pregnant and could be anywhere. And I wouldn't wanna, be on all that media, the style of cops, you know, at a vigil. I have some standards, not many, but causing a ruckus at a vigil is kind of my stop line. Meanwhile, approximately 1,200 or 1,300 people had showed up to support and to pray for Lacey's safe return. The media was present to spread a mobile command center to the park, and a platform stage was set up for the family. Ron and Sharon, Brent and his wife Rose, Amy and Dennis Rocha were on the stage representing Lacey. The defendant's parents, Jackie and Lee Peterson, were also on the stage. The defendant never went on stage. Seeing the defendant was in the crowd, a family friend suggested that he go on stage with his family, but the defendant said something to the effect of, "I'd rather be here, be happier here." Sharon never saw the defendant during the entire vigil. The vigil lasted a couple hours, and throughout it, the defendant chose not to sit on the stage with his parents or Lacey's family, but stood in the crowd near the back. Several friends of the Rocha family who knew the defendant noticed his cheerful demeanor that evening. The defendant seemed like he was very relaxed and in a good mood, somewhat jovial. Another individual observed that the defendant showed no emotion at the vigil. The pictured below are People's Trial Exhibits number 176A, H, I that were taken 1 week after Lacey's disappearance at the December 31st, 2002 candlelight vigil. Douchey McDoucheface, try not to smile and giggle when your missing pregnant wife, people are holding the little Dixie cup candles. Just Sir, you could not have made yourself look more all the guilty than pulling some of this BS at the daggone vigil. 1 minute after midnight, now January 1st, 2003, the defendant called Amber using his second cell phone to wish her a happy new year. Amber recorded their long conversation. Amber asked the defendant when he was coming back home from Europe, and the defendant responded that he was trying to reschedule his return trip for the end of January, but he needed to travel to Guadalajara, Mexico for a few days at the end of January and the beginning of February. The defendant told Amber about the French food he had sampled and he was going to go for a run. At one point in the conversation, the defendant complained that there was an effing dog next to his hotel that just keeps barking. The defendant said, "This is his quote, not mine, and I will be changing it. I just want to unalive it." Amber could hear a dog barking in the background. 73. Since the defendant was not at a hotel in Paris, it is quite possible that the barking dog was the family dog Mackenzie, who may have been barking at the New Year's Eve fireworks. However, the identity of the dog was never confirmed. Welcome, Broken Baker. When the defendant called Amber the following night on January 2nd, he again complained about the barking dog. The defendant asked Amber, "Can you hear that damn dog?" During the conversation, the defendant claimed that he had fallen while jogging in Brussels and fell onto the cobblestones, causing his right hip to be a very, very dark blue. So did Lacey fight back, sir? The defendant makes several trips to the bay but stays only a few minutes. A. Police begin surveilling the defendant. Beginning on Wednesday, January 3rd, 2003, the Modesto Police Department began physical surveillance of the defendant. Authorities set up a hidden camera referred to as a pole camera outside the defendant's Covina residence to monitor his comings and goings so they could follow him. Police resorted to this measure because staking out the Covina residence and its unmarked cars had proven difficult in the quiet neighborhood with the media. Defendant rents multiple vehicles. During the months of January and February 2003, the defendant rented several vehicles in Modesto. He rented a Dodge Neon on January 2nd and returned it 1 day later. On January 6th, he rented a Honda Civic and returned it the same day. On January 8th, he rented a Chevy S10 Sonoma pickup truck. He returned the Sonoma pickup truck on January the 10th and exchanged it for a Saturn. On January 16th, the defendant returned the Saturn and rented a Lincoln Town Car. He returned the Lincoln on January 23rd. Holy cow, Letitia Stalk. I mean, seriously, what the heck are we doing? Car bingo? Are we having, Higgins sort of administrative car shuffling about? What is going on here? The defendant rented a Dodge Dakota pickup truck on January 27th, which he returned 2 days later. On February 18th, the defendant rented a Chevy Tahoe and returned it the next day. Detective Grogan asked the California Department of Justice for a surveillance team. After securing a warrant, authorities also installed global positioning devices on several of the cars the defendant drove. As detailed below, the defendant traveled to Berkeley Marina on 5 days in January 2003. He drove a different vehicle each time. C. While police search for Lacey, defendant makes several quick trips to Berkeley Marina and plays games with law enforcement. Well, I mean, how was he to know that he would probably be the main suspect? I'm sure he was going on the full Jody idea that no, everyone's going to think it's masked Rob or Santa, but like evil Santa from Futurama. While law enforcement continued to conduct searches and dives in the bay, the defendant made multiple quick trips to Berkeley Marina. On the morning of January 5th, 2003, there were three vehicles beside the Land Rover parked at the defendant's house. At 7:30 a.m., the defendant left his residence driving the Land Rover and arrived at the Volunteer Center at 7:45 a.m. He was wearing blue sweater and blue jeans. The defendant left and went to his business at 9:20 a.m., where he stayed for 3 to 5 minutes, then returned home. At 9:40 a.m. until 11:30 a.m., the defendant and another male left in the Land Rover and were observed handing out missing flyers. At 11:38 or 39 a.m., they returned to the defendant's house and the male left. By 1:01 p.m., authorities observed the defendant changing his clothing. The defendant left the Land Rover, a gray Subaru. The defendant made no stops and drove the Subaru approximately 85 to 90 miles per hour straight to the Berkeley Marina and arrived at 2 p.m. The defendant drove on both sides of the marina. He did not stop or talk to anyone and left about 5 minutes uh, when he got back onto the freeway and drove back to Modesto. The defendant was driving extremely fast at about 85 to 90 miles per hour, and the surveillance units were having trouble keeping up with him. He took an off ramp by a gas station, drove past the gas pumps, but did not stop, then got back onto the freeway and continued. He did the same thing near Grant Line Road, taking the off ramp, driving through two gas stations before he stopped and got gas. The defendant got back onto the freeway and drove to Modesto, where he resumed driving normally. The defendant returned home at 3:35 p.m. At 4:45 p.m., the defendant then got into a blue Ford SUV and went to the Del Rio Country Club for an hour. On January 6, 2003, Modesto police officers conducted further surveillance on the defendant. He left his residence that morning and went to the volunteer center at 7:30 a.m. in the Land Rover. He left the volunteer center around 8:36 a.m. The defendant stopped at his business for 3 minutes between 8:53 a.m. and 8:56 a.m., then drove to other locations. At around 10:21 a.m., the defendant went to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where he rented a red Honda and left his Land Rover. The defendant returned to his business for almost 10 minutes before he left and drove the Honda to Berkeley Marina. This time, the defendant was driving slower than the day before at 80 miles per hour. Well, I'm sure he'll see a lot more not going 85. He arrived at Berkeley Marina at about 11:52 a.m. and did not make any stops along the way. At the marina, the defendant drove up to Spinnaker, a street near the marina, then pulled up northern roundabout where he pulled over, stopped for 2 minutes with his brake lights illuminated. After about 2 minutes, the defendant drove into a parking lot. Officer Betts tried to reposition his undercover vehicle. However, the defendant began following the officer. The officers took a series of turns, driving out of the marina into the city of Berkeley. However, the defendant continued to follow him for 5 to 10 minutes. Officers lost the defendant in the city of Berkeley. They found the defendant when he returned to Enterprise Rent-A-Car and returned the red Honda between 5 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. that night. He picked up his Land Rover and drove to a strip mall parking lot and eventually returned to his home at 5:42 p.m. The silver Subaru was still parked at the defendant's house at this time. On January 8th, officers observed the defendant drive the Land Rover to Modesto Police Department. He made a complete circle of the various police buildings, then left without getting out of the car. 74. As discussed below, by this time, Amber had confronted the defendant about Lacey and told him in a conversation the previous night she was considering going to the police department the following day. The defendant went to Enterprise, left the Land Rover, and drove away in a white pickup truck. An unidentified female who had been with defendant drove Lacey's Land Rover back to Covina. On January 9th, the defendant left home just after 7 a.m. in a white pickup truck. He stopped at the warehouse for 5 minutes, then headed back to Berkeley Marina, where he arrived at 10:40 a.m. At the marina, the defendant proceeded along Spinnaker Way around the traffic circle. He drove around both sides of the marina, including the boat launch parking area, before leaving. As with his other trips to the marina, the defendant did not stop to talk to anyone. On his way home, the defendant drove to the Medeiros Reservoir area, which was another one of the areas being searched. That same day, officers who were surveilling the defendant noticed that he was driving in an unusual pattern. Over a 2-hour period, the defendant would exit the freeway, drive down a street, make a U-turn, pull into a parking lot, then get back on the freeway, exit the freeway, proceed into a parking lot. This driving pattern occurred repeatedly on multiple freeways. On the morning of January 11th, officers who were monitoring the poll camera observed the defendant leave the house, walk to the Land Rover in the driveway, crouch down, and inspect different areas of the undercarriage of the vehicle. The defendant went back into the house, came out a short while later, and got into the silver Saturn parked at the house and left. Later that day, authorities followed the defendant as he was driving in the Saturn southbound on State Route 99. At one point, the defendant pulled onto the shoulder of a freeway. A female agent, Tara Ferris, started to pull in behind the defendant, but she was called off so that she would not expose the surveillance. Ferris drove past the defendant on the shoulder and took the first exit off the freeway. She pulled in behind a business just off the freeway. Ferris heard on radio that the defendant had also taken the same exit. At that point, Ferris saw the defendant pull in alongside her. He made eye contact with her and showed her a piece of notepaper he was holding. Ferris wrote off because, yeah, this dude is probably suspect numero uno in his wife's disappearance, and now he's trying to show you a ransom note? Nope. The defendant followed her for 1 or 2 blocks before leaving her alone. Based on the events of that day, authorities concluded that the defendant was aware he was being surveilled, and authorities shut down the camera surveillance. Tracking data supplied by manufacturers of the GPS systems also disclosed that the defendant also drove to the marina on January 26th and 27th. On January 26th, he took the Land Rover, and on January 27th, he drove the Dodge Dakota he rented for one day. D. Wiretap indicated the defendant continued his trips to the Bay. After the defendant's suspicious trips to the Bay and his antics with law enforcement, Modesto Police Department obtained a court-authorized wiretap for the defendant's cellular phones. Investigator Steve Jacobson of the San Elias County District Attorney's Office was the supervisor for the court-authorized wiretap of the defendant's cell phones. The first wiretap took place beginning January 10th, 2003 until February 4th, 2003. On the morning of January 11th, searchers on San Francisco Bay were trying to determine if a recent sonar hit was a body. This search activity was reported heavily by the media. Defendant's cell phone activity revealed that he was around Berkeley Marina that morning. At 10:48 a.m., the defendant received an incoming phone call from his mother while he was in the area of the marina. Aw, mom got her boy caught. The defendant told his mother he was in West Fresno. I mean, Scott should just have a passport full of places he's BS'd about. He needs a BS passport. The def Okay. That afternoon, the defendant received a voicemail message from Sharon Rocha in which she, with obvious relief, told the defendant that the sonar hit turned out to be an anchor and not Lacey. The wiretap recorded the defendant listening to the voicemail message. Immediately after Sharon said it was not Lacey, and she just wanted the defendant to know, the defendant could be heard to let out an audible sigh, which could reasonably be characterized as a whistle. Lacey knew about the defendant's affair, but no one else did. Police questioned defendant about affair and his doppelganger. On January 3rd, Detective Grogan met with to show the defendant a faxed photo of him and Amber in front of a Christmas tree and asked the defendant to explain. The defendant looked at it for a few seconds and then asked, "Is that supposed to be me? I mean, I guess if all else fails, just pretend it's not you and a twin." He went on to say that the female in the photo looked like a girl he went to college with, but didn't think it was her. Grogan told the defendant that if he was having an affair, he should come clean about having an affair because it did not necessarily mean that he had harmed Lacey. No, he was. The defendant assured the detective that the last time he dated anyone other than Lacey was before they were married. That evening, the defendant had dinner at Sharon's house with Lacey's family. This is the part, like, I can understand in a moment of panic, passion, maybe doing something unthinkable. But the fact that he went over to her parents' house, that he ate dinner with them and everything else, it's just, it's that extra level of almost enjoying the chaos he has sowed that is just beyond the pale to me. And I understand that, right now the state haven't hasn't given us conclusive evidence beyond the very, solid, kind of small pieces of circumstantial evidence that we have gotten. We haven't tied it all together, but that right there has to be the grossest thing if he is innocent. And I'll probably go another 10 minutes, but we are getting some good heavy thunder going, which means I will probably lose internet. But we'll try to get through section B of Amber confronts the defendant about his lost wife. And he's like, I didn't lie. She is lost. What a absolute jerk face. The defendant never mentioned that he was having an affair or the woman was Amber Fry. The defendant continued to contact Amber after police confronted the defendant with a photo of the two of them. On January 4th, 2003, the defendant asked, "Wouldn't it wouldn't it be fun to be able to stay in the mindset of just constant discovery?" On the subject of love and commitment, the defendant said, "Love doesn't mean that people can be together forever." Oh, he should write Hallmark cards. During the same conversation, the defendant would self-deprecate and refer to himself as chubby. He claimed he had fallen again and had bruised his hip. He told Amber that he was packing up because he was heading to catch the train at Madrid, Spain. What in the fantasy life of Scott Peterson? Amber confronts the defendant about his lost wife. On Monday, January 6, 2003, investigators decided it was time for Amber to confront the defendant about being married to the missing woman. Following the investigators' instructions, Amber left a message for the defendant indicating she had received a voicemail message from a friend who was out of state and called from the airport. Amber told the defendant that in her friend's voicemail, she said she needed to speak with Amber right away and it concerned Amber's well being. Doing damage control, the defendant phoned Amber and she recorded the call. Amber confronted the defendant about him telling her he had lost his wife, and this would be his first holiday without her in early December. The defendant admitted he had told Amber about his that he had lost his wife. He also told her that the wife he said he lost, was in fact missing. In a later conversation with Amber on January 6th, the defendant referred to Connor only as being Lacey's child. He said, "Our hope, and it's a sad hope, is that, well, I mean, we need a tip. That's why we have such a big reward. We're just hoping that someone is holding her for her child and that we can, get her back with a tip." He went on to say, "I think we'll find her well with her child." Just, I just absolutely ridiculous. So that is where I'm going to end today. It's a little short of the 2-hour goal I had, but the sky is lighting up, and I'm going to make sure we're not under a warning. Yeah. So I'm gonna end it there, but I think maybe another 3 or 4 of these kind of 2-hour blocks, and we'll be able to get through the state, and then we will go over what the Innocence Project has filed and what their arguments are, because I am trying to be not biased, and then I will be doing a murder board with kind of the timeline and what we have figured out. Mr. Mo is going to help me move the giant murder board into El Closeto, and we shall be cooking with fire. Anywho, I have you guys going to EU's something, but don't forget tonight that there are. I think Baker has a panel as well, and then I think Lego night tonight with Valhalla and Max Murrah and MLS. David, doing their Lego thing, but I am gonna get off of here now because nature is saying, "Stop with the long-winded goodbye. We're about ready to open up the heavens and downpour." So, I will see you guys in a little bit. Thanks for joining me. I'm definitely learning a lot of things that I did not know about this case. So, I will see you guys tomorrow, probably.